All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be diving into the section entitled Paranormal Realms and Dimensions, coming to us once again from the wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins, classic teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment. And this has been a fantastic series, ladies and gentlemen. We began the series oddly in the back of the book, where we went through the bonus material of the most valuable qualities for a spiritual seeker. And after we did that and a few episodes on this playlist on my channel here, we began from the beginning. And we've gone through very wonderful subjects such as moving from the ego to service, truth and subjectivity, calibrating the consciousness levels of mankind, the duality of the ego, and starting the pathway of non-duality, all the way to such things as becoming a spiritual seeker and lifting the consciousness level of humanity. And so last couple weeks, we spoke about happiness and overcoming negative feelings and negative thoughts. And I feel like that was one of my more important videos on this channel. However, you know how that goes. The algorithm says, well, you think this is the best video. We're not going to show it to anybody, which is just fine. We'll continue on nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen. But if you did miss that video, check it out. Last week, very important, what you need to know about happiness, negative feelings, and thoughts. Now today, paranormal realms and dimensions. Thank you for being here once again. I love and appreciate each and every one of you that spends time here with me and the wonderful authors and poets and mystics and philosophers and sages of the ages, ladies and gentlemen. Let us dive in to paranormal realms and dimensions and see what Dr. David Hawkins has to say. He begins by saying, quote, "Straight and narrow is the path. You can spend quite a few lifetimes wandering through the fantasy world of physics and channelers, psychics, sorry. You can spend quite a few lifetimes wandering through the fantasy world of psychics and channelers and people like this, the world of tarot cards and tea leaf readings, which I'm all very fascinated in. I love all of it. Open minds, ladies and gentlemen, but not so open it falls out on the sidewalk. Now, they are usually a dead end. What do you mean, Dr. Hawkins? Some entity on the other side tells you about a whole other dimension. Next thing you know, you're all involved in that dimension. A lot of them have gods with a weird name and various hierarchies. And a lot of times for additional money, see, remember last time we talked about these gurus that will try to get you trapped into, some kind of spiritual following. Like spiritual truth is transparent, is what David Hawkins said. For that which is veiled, mysterious, cloaked, you have to pay money. Like, oh, the mystical secret of the ancients, I'll tell you, if you pay $500 or, these kind of things. And so a lot of times for additional money, they will move you up to a different higher level of this hierarchy or of anarchy. For another 5,000, they'll introduce you to master and so on, a different level. And you will now have some magical powers or something. And those of us who research real magic understand that this is hilarious and unfortunate and could be a trap for many who have not had the discernment, so to speak. However, no judgment here. I am no master. We are just discovering what David R. Hawkins has to teach us here today. And so the whole thing is seductive. What's being seduced is the innocent curiosity of the child within each of us, I'll add. For $5,000, they'll raise your level of consciousness 100 points an hour. For $50,000, they guarantee you'll be enlightened in 6 weeks. I suppose people like to send them money because they're still there. When you first realize that there is something other than just logic in the phenomenal world, the child in you goes, oh, wow. And this is where I live most of my life, in this, oh, wow, amazing. I want to know more. Tell me every wild thing that you could possibly think of, because I love to hear about it all. However, Dr. Hawkins continues and says, I'm not saying the paranormal doesn't exist, but scripture says not to go there. Why? Because you're dealing in other realms and you have no education or sophistication or awareness of the rules and the laws of those realms. Remember, for every, there's a give and a take. So you don't get things without having to reciprocate the action. And sometimes that can lead us into situations in these areas that we do not want to be in. So use extreme caution, and honestly, do not go there, because we are dealing with areas that we have no education, sophistication, or awareness of the rules and the laws of these alternate realities, these alternate planes, these alternate realms, whatever you want to call the paranormal, different realities that many people find themselves interacting or researching into. However, sorry, I ramble too much. The angels fear to tread there, Dr. David R. Hawkins says. Why wouldn't you? It's morbid curiosity. See, he seems to come from a Christian perspective, but he's very mystical. So it makes me wonder where his, point of view really comes from. However, once again, open-minded here. It's morbid curiosity. You want to check out hell? You're not going to check out hell without getting burned. Well, I would say that's a stupid sentiment, because hell doesn't exist at all. It was a creation by the Holy Roman Church in the 1600s to scare the shit out of people, to get them trapped into a fear and guilt control matrix. So come on, David R. Hawkins, you're normally better than this. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I advise people, don't be tempted by the drama of it. If you got to climb the highest mountain, make a note of the fact that 176 people have died there already trying to do the same thing. I never know where he's going to go with these, ladies and gentlemen, so hopefully you get value today. It's just fun for me to I'd be doing this on my own anyway. So you can go out of body and visit other dimensions. You're not equipped to go there. You don't know anything about who's who there, and you're an innocent victim the minute you arrive. Tarot cards, Ouija boards, psychic readings, throwing runes are all forms of magic. The child in us is entranced by the magic. And I am not against any of those things except for Ouija boards. That's pretty silly if you know anything about rules. However, I tell people not to try to calibrate low energies. They'll get attracted to that which is quote unquote evil or demonic or dark. I mean, many of these words have different connotations based on long-standing interpretations that are terrible translations from older languages. However, you start trying to calibrate it, because your pendulum is going to get hit by that energy. And one of your energy fields and chakras can get reversed by the way. Don't play around with it. The pendulum is not a game. And as with any kind of divination, it shouldn't be done for the sport. I like that sentiment. See, that's smart. I mean, he is very smart, this gentleman. And so, but it's that sentiment there, these things, whether they be tarot cards or psychic readings or many different forms of divination, it is not a game. And as with any of these kinds of divination, it should not be done for the sport. Many people play with divination and we never hear from them again. I don't recommend it to people because it means they have to have some curiosity that is so hypothetical. It has nothing to do with their own spiritual destination. This is very interesting. I had no idea he was going to be describing this in this way. It seems like he has had some encounters that were not so positive, and he has seen people that have had encounters experimenting with these kinds of things. I mean, he was a leader in the spiritual field, so many people would come to him, I'm sure, with many, many stories and experiences that they have had. And so he must be slightly scarred from some of these stories or his own personal experiences dealing with these kinds of things. That, at least, is what it is, the type of feeling I'm getting from what he is saying to us here. It's a great caution. And so I'll continue here. Many people play with divination and we never hear from them again. I'm like, who was that? Who did you know that this happened to them? I hear a lot of people that do tarot readings and all kinds of stuff, and they're perfectly fine. So I'm wondering, I mean, there are other areas you can get into that, the Aleister Crowleys of the world and stuff like that, that are just way beyond the bounds, and definitely nobody should ever be experimenting with anything like that. But that would be extremely obvious in the situation. It makes me wonder. Anyways, he continues, I don't recommend it to people because it means they have to have some curiosity that is so hypothetical, it has nothing to do with their own spiritual destination. In other words, you're just asking out of idle curiosity, and often you're playing with very negative energies when you're doing that. You're trying to flirt with the negative and think you won't get burned. That's not going to happen. He says, I know a lot of people who dealt with pendulums, started checking out other dimensions, and they really blew up and even became psychotic. So there he gives it to us. Many of these psychics over time turn out to be false because you can see the business opportunity for, an eccentric kind of person who doesn't want to live a normal lifestyle and make a normal living, which I'm not saying that's the right way to live your life. We each have our own destiny and purpose to fulfill here. However, but many will find shortcuts and take advantage of people and their curiosities and calling themselves psychics. But we all know this. And so there's one locally, he says, that does all the things that are so typical of a cult. He tells other people how to live, gets them bonded to them, tells them about their sex life, and makes them turn all their money over to him. One thing about these cult leaders you'll notice is that sex is forbidden to all the followers, but not to the cult leader. I haven't heard that. That's odd. However, well, of course, he's entitled to go to bed with anybody he wishes to, and then cite some entry from the other side. The fallacy of the whole thing is so transparent to a sophisticated person, but the person who gets entrapped into it, their inner child, gets brainwashed by all of this quote unquote mumbo jumbo. And of course, we look at Jonestown as an example and wonder, how could 1,000 sane adults commit suicide all at the same time? How could that be? Cults, you see, are dangerous because they have the capacity to brainwash people. A teacher, on the other hand, and this might be the most important lesson of today, and I had no idea, once again, I have no idea where this is going to go, but a teacher, a true teacher, a guide, sets you free, ladies and gentlemen. It gives you the knowledge and the understanding and the information and the courage and the inspiration that we need as individuals to continue on in our journey and be free of any trappings. As you can see, as Christianity has done many of the same things as these cults have done over thousands of years in many of the, giant dogmatic religious institutions, whatever they be. However, and I lost my spot there, a teacher should set you free, should free you, not bind you, ladies and gentlemen. You should not be bound by the teacher. On the contrary, you should be freed by the teacher. You owe nothing to a teacher whatsoever, except to be polite and listen if you wish. You are not in bondage, and you don't owe, you're not obligated. A true teacher doesn't try to control you or get you to turn over your financial assets to them. Now, there are many people I support that I have supported with financial means, and they have been teachers to me in my life, but I did it out of a reverence and a respect and a thank you, because I know that, it takes a little bit to survive in this world. And so those of us that are doing this kind of work here online and on these platforms, sharing with people, when we ask for, to buy something from the link in the description or support if somebody has a Patreon or whatever it be, to me, it comes from this perspective of you do not owe anything to a teacher except to be polite and listen if you wish to. If not, then you can go somewhere else. That is just fine. You're not bound, you do not owe anything, and you're not obligated. If you feel inspired to support through whatever means you'd like, then that is wonderful. However, a true teacher does not try to control you or get you to turn over your financial assets to them. The other thing false teachers do is theatrics, by which I mean putting on great displays with fancy robes and entourages and great wonders, buildings and all, to impress you with their importance. Well, the buildings, as we know, is an entirely different subject, one that I hope we can begin researching and talking about here on this channel. Let me know if you'd like to do that. Looking into such things, ladies and gentlemen, is this. But that, once again, we will get to in the future if you are interested. And so this kind of putting on these great displays to impress you with their importance. Oh, how mighty and chosen I am. You get this kind of thing from these people that would deem themselves as... Anyways, let me continue. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes I try to explain too much. However, great displays, fancy robes, entourages, great wonders, buildings and all, to impress you with their importance. The other thing is they try to impress you with is the number of followers. They have 10 million followers in India or something like that. Because I calibrate the guy with 10 million followers and he comes out at 140. So we're a bit like lemmings being led over the cliff. Anybody remember lemmings? That's hilarious, ladies and gentlemen. So there was another gentleman known as the Führer back in the day who had 40 million adoring followers too. And he calibrated at 90 and almost destroyed the country and almost destroyed, the country and most of the continent. The fact that somebody has lots of followers doesn't mean a single thing whatsoever, especially here online where there can be, false followers. People can buy followers. And I've had emails like this where they send you emails and they're like, here, if you PayPal us $25, we'll give you 2,500 followers. And I'm like, but what would that do? I'm like, why would you want a number that doesn't mean anything? I'm like, if I had 1 million non-existent followers, nobody would even watch the videos anyways. So it doesn't matter. It's craziness, as you can see. So I would rather have 100 followers and have all 100 of them actually appreciate the work. However, or at least get some kind of value out of the work. causing the appreciation. But you know what I mean. So the followers, the fact that somebody has lots of followers doesn't mean a single thing whatsoever. Plus, some teachers start out integrous with integrity and reach a high place, and then they fall because of the position they gain. That is another innocence that the innocent person doesn't realize, that he was calibrated 570, but now down to 190, below the level of integrity. Dr. David Hawkins continues, I always teach students that sooner or later you're going to become a teacher. We are all teachers and students, ladies and gentlemen. At the same time, we are teachers to some, and some are teachers to us. And this is always going on at every moment in our life. So be a lifelong learner and teacher. But and each of the levels of consciousness has its downsides and its traps. Once you become a teacher, there's this seduction of being glamorized or idolized. People saying that they love you. And the attraction of money and fame and power over many people. Therefore, many are the gurus who began to ascend the path and then crashed. Half a dozen or more on TV or the internet. They were at a high place at one point. I'd probably say half a dozen, thousand or more. However, they were at a high place at one point and then fell into the pitfalls and the traps of these higher positions. Now, once again, he's referencing the map of consciousness, which we've looked at multiple times before in this series. And you could see how you could get to these higher points, and it could lead to this trap dropping you back down. But it's a fluctuating situation. We don't just level up and we're like, ooh, we're calibrated level 500 now forever. That's just where we stay. It's like, no, we are always fluctuating. It's like Satori. It is this spontaneous, momentary enlightenment that can just be a moment of aha, like, wow. And then you go back to normal life and you're back below, back below that level. And so I think the important point there is that we can all get there quickly, immediately. I believe, he says, a teacher should teach students that when you reach a certain level of consciousness, these are the temptations that you will be presented with. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm pretty sure he does that in his other books over here, Power versus Force, The Eye of the Eye, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, and there's also 4 or 5 more that go in that series. Powerful stuff, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested. But a teacher should teach students that when you reach a certain level of consciousness, there are temptations that you will be presented with. Don't forget the Buddha, ladies and gentlemen, was beset by, quote unquote, demons. Whatever that means in that translation. And people think, oh, they're going to come in the form of evil demons. Except they're not going to come in the form of evil demons. They're going to come in the form of seductions, sweet adornings, people saying, oh, master, and all of the things that the material realm presents us with. When we talk about the separation, the distinction, the dichotomy between that which is pure and divine and spiritual, that immortal part of our nature, our dual nature, and then that which is the opposite, that which is dark and, coarse, some call it evil, here in the material, physical realm, the mortal realm of our dual nature. And that comes to us from the teachings of the Corpus Hermeticum and Hermes Trismegistus from the 3rd century AD and even earlier times, ladies and gentlemen. Now, so the dramatization. I'm not saying that there isn't a lot of it. Scripture says it doesn't invalidate the paranormal. It still exists. And that's important to recognize. However, it reminds us, be very careful, and almost 100% of the time, don't go there. You are no master yet. Once again, it takes many, many, many lifetimes, ladies and gentlemen. You can have a couple of readings and become entranced, and then suddenly their readings go off, and some of the readings suddenly go wrong. And so all those things, they're only tentative, and they're only transitory spiritual fiction. Because then the reality seems mundane and pedestrian as compared to the magical wonderment of the tarot card reading or whatever. Now, I myself have had multiple readings, and I enjoy it. But once again, it's not an end-all be-all. And even the gentleman doing the reading explained that this is just a, kind of a rough idea. Any of this can be fluctuant at any time, and it could actually be, who knows, just totally off. So it's up to you personally and how you interpret it and continue in your lives. But this doesn't mean that astrology and astrotheology and numerology and all of these things can help us as tools in our journeys. Once again, takes great research. And for 99% of us, we should honestly, not go there. However, I will continue. I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not against any of these things. I'm just reading what Dr. David R. Hawkins has to teach us, and it's a good caution, I think. It's a good caution. However, here the error is to fall, this is when it comes back to getting off the spiritual path, is falling into the seduction of all of this paranormal stuff. Even though we're not saying that it doesn't invalidate it and that it doesn't exist. We're not saying that it does invalidate it and that it doesn't exist. We are just saying that the problem here, and the problem for most of us on this spiritual path of trying to increase the level of consciousness of humanity and ourselves, and, if you want to say like light up your chakras or, increase whatever you want to call it, the spiritual path that we're on. The problem is it can be a seduction that leads us off of that path and on to, a fanciful fiction that isn't the correct path. And I wonder this about so much information that comes out nowadays online. Is this just an ultimate distraction despite being so compelling? I don't know. There's a lot of things that I researched that any of it could really just be an ultimate distraction from something. But what is that something? That's why I always come back to this main thing, that there is this thing all throughout history and humanity that, most cultures around the world seem to refer to this weird thing as God. And that is the most important underlying essence or force or energy source or just source plain in general for everything. And that, it seems to be this underlying feature. So that's, to me, that could even be a distraction from something. So who knows? However, we are getting a caution here from Dr. David Hawkins. We can become entranced, and the problem is not that it doesn't exist. The problem is that it is the wrong direction, and here the error is to fall for the seduction. That is the quality or a power of your personal self, which it is not. The phenomena happen of their own accord. There is no personal self calling them. We have witnessed miracles many times, ladies and gentlemen. And the trap is to think that you are the one who brought about the miracle. Rather than what we've learned so much on this channel is that we are just participants in the entire miracle of reality, regardless of our tiny little human judgment perspective of it. I mean, when you're outside of time, and when you're outside of, a limited physical, separate perspective, and you just see everything as one, and you are not separate from any of it, but you see all of it as you, And then at the same time, you see all of time. That could give us a different perspective, ladies and gentlemen. And then when we have witnessed these miracles, we will not fall into the trap of thinking that, oh, we are the one or somebody else is the one who has magical powers to do so. There is no person doing any miracles. The potentiation occurs when a certain energy field arises. See, we've talked about potential, future pull, manifesting, all of this stuff. But this occurs only when the potentiation occurs within certain energy fields arising within universal, situations, using universal law. So once again, we can be easily confused and led astray by the seduction of the idea of, being a great master and that we are the one, when really the secret to magic is, releasing and allowing and knowing that there is something greater that you are a part of, that you can co-create with. And when you can align with that energy field and that force, and that when you can recognize when the potentiation occurs, when certain energy field arises, then you can, in alignment, flow with that. Very interesting. I don't know. This could be described in many ways. I hope you're getting value, ladies and gentlemen. I love each and every one of you that spends time here with me. And smash the like. Let me know what you think in the comments below. There is no person, Dr. David R. Hawkins, doing any miracles. It only happens when all the conditions are appropriate, including, I think extremely importantly, karmic conditions. Your past life karma, your current life karma, your dharma. I mean, all of these things. And we've talked about karma and dharma also on this channel in the past. Probably like 2 years ago now. There was a cool book my brother gave me called Karma Rules, and it went through quite an excellent explanation of all of that. However, karmic rules, when the apple is ready, simply it falls from the tree. Now, the apple doesn't cause itself to fall from the tree, and we don't say that, wow, what a magical apple that was to cause itself to fall from the tree. No, of course not. There is the field of gravity, at least what we think we know of such things. However, so within the spiritual aura of an advanced teacher, phenomena that are due to occur karmically and for many reasons may be facilitated, but there's no personal self doing a cause and effect miraculous cure. You witnessed phenomena happen. You are the witness of them. And one is aware that, yes, the energy field could exhilarate a propensity, but that karmic propensity is within the person himself, and all one did was to be a facilitator, be an intermediary, an in-between, a middleman, so to speak. And I've heard great stories of great healings that Dr. Wayne W. Dyer described. And, even the kahunas talk about this flowing of energy like water. And they are just, intermediaries. It is not them doing the healing. It is the belief in them from the person and themselves to the person through the source. And, we tend to see it as something miraculous. Propensity. So once again, though, remember that there is no personal self doing the acts. I don't know. I felt it important to say that again. Remember, this is all open for discussion and debate and, further pontification and contemplation, because remember the teachings of the legendary sage god Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus, that true spiritual striving, the true spiritual philosophy and understanding is a constant contemplation to attain the true knowledge. of what was described then as Atum, the one God, or the universe, or of reality, or simply put, the things that are. And also, as Hermes or Thoth put it, there can be no religion more true or just than to simply seek to know the things that are, all of reality, and to try to understand it. But most people would hear that and go, why would you want to do that? I'll say, I don't know. We're all here and interested in different things. But if you are here on the channel, then I'm sure that you have some form of interest in that. Now, let me continue. Let me continue. Potentiate the person himself. All one did was facilitate it. For example, a person who is very sick and disabled will sit down next to you. And when you can feel this energy move over in their domain, then they'll get up and walk away. Well, you're aware it wasn't you that removed the illness, it was the energy, the Kundalini energy. That's an entirely different subject in its own. But I'm sure, once again, if you're here, you know about the Kundalini. Because of previous spiritual work that brought about an inner honesty and awareness, you just witnessed the phenomena. It was the unfolding of potentiality emerging as a consequence of the energy fields surrounding it, which potentialized it. The Kundalini energy, David Hawkins continues, and once again, we're reading from The Wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins, Classic Teachings on Spiritual Truth and Enlightenment for Purposes of Teaching and Commentary and Expanding the Mind, so that we can continue to seek to achieve and maintain happiness in our lives. Seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment, through a greater understanding and awareness of the nature of reality, of the things that are, simply. I love how Thoth or Hermes put that. But this energy field, I love how I put that there. Because of previous spiritual work that brought about an inner honesty and awareness, you just witnessed the phenomenon. It was the unfolding of a potentiality emerging as a consequence of the energy fields surrounding it, which potentialized it. Brilliantly put there. The Kundalini energy, by virtue of its own nature, is what is transformative and accomplishes the miraculous, not the personal you. And so I think this is why in the beginning of this video and section entitled Paranormal Realms and Dimensions, he gave us such a great warning against dabbling with, cult style people and people that are into brainwashing and getting people to, fall into their traps of being, oh, I can read the future and predict and tell you what's going to happen in your life, and all these different forms of divination that can really connect to certain types of energy fields that can really pull us down. Can really pull us down, ladies and gentlemen. That's why he was saying earlier, we got to be careful. And we probably shouldn't mess with things that we, the way he put it, is I'm not saying that there isn't a lot to it, this paranormal stuff. And scripture says that it doesn't invalidate the paranormal. It just gives us a warning. Don't go there. Because, you can have a couple of personal readings or whatever, but so many of us, because the curiosity, the inner child within us, we will become entranced, and then suddenly we go off, and before we know it, we are in a position of this trap that was described earlier in this video. And when we understand energy fields and enlightenment and the chakras and the Kundalini and all of this work, then we understand how that could put us in a very opposite position of the work that we're actually trying to do here, ladies and gentlemen. And so the Kundalini energy, or your alignment and connection and harmony with nature, or God, or the Tao, Atum, grand organized design, great spirit, whatever you want to call it. Your alignment and connection to that by virtue of its own nature is what is transformative and accomplishes the miraculous, not the personal you. This is very fascinating, actually. It makes me remember when I was reading the Franz Barden's Initiation into Hermetics, and I was like, man, I could easily see how you could take many, many shortcuts to do certain forms of magic, and that it would be very dark and have very dark consequences for you. Or to be a Jedi, on the other hand, just as an example, like the Sith, they got their magical force powers, or whatever you want to call it. I like the word the force, though. It really is, another word to describe this energy force or whatever that is the source behind everything, this God thing that all cultures throughout all time have been trying to figure out and understand and have some sort of connection to. But the dark side uses anger. And, it uses this readily available, powerful, but uncontrollable, the easy way. But they're met with negative consequences because, once again, it's hard to control without great practice. So, on the opposite side, the Jedi train their entire lives at temple from the age of, from a young age. I think it was 13 in the series, but many of the students come at younger than that. But they go to the temple away from the normal world and live in the temple their entire lives, or, at least until they are deemed good enough through their training and practice and meditation on these spiritual philosophies that they can then go out into the world and try to have a positive impact. And their ability, once again, going back to Hermetics and Franz Barden, their ability through great diligence and spiritual work without using the shortcuts gives them the same abilities, but it's far more controllable. And you don't have the negative outcomes that you would get with using the shortcuts of, we'll just say, magnetic. No, I'm not even going to mention it. Anyways, let us continue. Electric and magnetic things is a secret, ladies and gentlemen, but that's a different subject for somebody to get to on their own time. However, everybody needs a teacher to warn them of this. And I'm actually glad David Hawkins went here today, because we all need this kind of warning when it comes to spiritual growth and the obstacles to spiritual growth, the things that can get in our way and stop us from reaching higher levels of consciousness, increasing, our kundalini energy, lighting up our chakras, or just plainly becoming more enlightened, more aware in our lives. Everybody needs a teacher to warn them of this. Miracle workers are a dime a dozen. When the miracle came on, it was the phenomenon. Then the personal self took credit for that. So someone out there that's saying, oh, I'm a miracle worker, you can tell their ego is in control if they're taking credit for the work of something outside of themselves that they may have happened to be aligned with in a certain potentiality of an energy field at the time. Miracle workers are a dime a dozen. When the miracle came on as a phenomenon, then the personal self took credit for that. The ego got exaggerated, ladies and gentlemen. Now they don't have that miraculous power anymore, but they don't want the world to know that. So they've learned how to fake it. And for one of the most famous gurus of recent times in India, the phenomena occurred spontaneously in the beginning. Then he claimed credit for it. Then he brought great throngs and brought great money. And then he began to learn how to fake that which had before been autonomous. Now, it's a very subtle thing. And it's happened to many, many, more than one guru, ladies and gentlemen. And that concludes the section entitled Paranormal Realms and Dimensions and Obstacles to Spiritual Growth. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be looking at spiritual truth. Dr. David R. Hawkins says, now we're going to be talking about spiritual truth. There are many false teachers in the world, and I was quite amazed when I discovered how many there were. It only cost you $5,000. Once again, that's his great example. Whenever somebody is like, it only cost you $5,000. But we must stay true. When one is growing and seeking, there may be others in one's life that may not understand our pursuit to grow further spiritually. But Dr. Hawkins tells us to respond and how we can respond in these kind of situations. And this is the kind of stuff we'll be getting to in the future, ladies and gentlemen, continuing on this series of the wisdom of Dr. David R. Hawkins' classic teachings on spiritual truth and enlightenment. Ladies and gentlemen, that was profound and that was powerful. I did not expect it to go there. Hopefully I can find a good title for this video. Hopefully the algorithm gets it to those that need to see it, ladies and gentlemen. But once again, it's all out of our hands. There is no personal self doing the work. I think we'll leave it there. That one was pretty deep, different than what I expected, but always fun and always valuable, profound, informative. And some of these have been life-changing for me. And so hopefully they have been for you as well, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you so much. I love and appreciate each and every one of you that spends time here with me and Dr. David R. Hawkins, Dr. Wayne Dyer in the past, and all the other wonderful authors and poets and mystics and philosophers and sages of the ages. I will be back tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, and we will maybe, actually, if I'm not back tomorrow, then I apologize. I might have some business to take care of. However, if we are back tomorrow, we will be beginning the 11th chapter of the Corpus Hermeticum, called Of the Common Mind to Thoth, Thoth's son. Very fascinating. Very fascinating. That looks to be a long one as well, ladies and gentlemen. 128 verses. Very fun. Very fun. See if we get there tomorrow. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be the change that you want to see. Be the example that you want to set. Thank you. Love and appreciate each and every one of you.